Greetings to you on this monthly event by the Center of Economical Strategy. This is the event in the framework of our monthly review of the situation of Ukrainian economy in days of war. These are the events that are organized monthly as of 2022. My name is Hlib Vyshlinsky. I'm the Executive Director of the Center of the Economical Strategy. I'm going to be the MC today on this specific month, just like in the previous months. And I also hope in the future this project was and is financed by the Program for International Departments from the government of Great Britain. We are grateful to our partners for the support. As always, we have the translation in English. If you want to listen, please switch to the English language in your Zoom software, in your Zoom application. And likewise, just like always, the technical opportunities, we ask for your questions to be indicated in the Q&A, which, especially if it's technical related questions, if you address the questions to some specific people, they would respond to Q&A in the written form, and if you have enough time, then you can refer your question to me directly or to the speaker. But if you have comments, you can also use the chat as well. So, subject for today, definitely we've got lots of technical details, but I have not mentioned about the most important thing. Our subject for today is quite obvious, which is the impact of the strikes on the energy system, how it impacted the works and operations of the business. That's the subject of Ukraine economy throughout the last month, starting with the massive, successful, and we are sorry to say that strikes on the energy system in the first part of January in merger with the extra strong and lengthy periods of frost and cold weather. This, no matter the fact that the war is on for 4 years, this became a challenging, a risky thing that's relatively not expected, risk that was materialized for Ukrainian business. Definitely, it has complicated the activities of Ukrainian companies, and following the questionnaire for Ukrainian Business Association, 80% of the companies, they did sense the impact of power outages, but majority of the companies, at least those that were questioned by the EBA, they did manage to adapt. As always, we'll have two parts of the show. In the first part, my colleagues from the Center of Economical Strategies, they would discuss the situation of the Ukraine economy in the months of January. We would there observe some of the outcomes for the variety of economical markers and things that were taking place in us with regards to the demand on the energy and other consequences of the difficult January and beginning of February. And after that, we would also present briefly our vision of that impact. And as always, we will have the discussion with the representatives of the state institutions and with the business representatives as far as how exactly the energy crisis impacted the business and how can the state assist here in the situation as difficult as this. But we'll start, just like always, with the review of the Ukrainian economy in the months of January. I'm going to give the floor to my colleagues now. So, dear Lazars, thank you for sharing. So, Nataliia Kolesnichenko, the senior economist. Lazar, please, next slide. So we will start with some summaries of the previous year. We've got GDP for the first quarter, which was up by 3% in comparison to the quarter for 2025, which has got the estimated GDP by year by 1.8% growth for 2025. This GDP have exceeded the level of $200 billion. Sorry, there's a mistake in the slide. And basically, this was never happening before in the Ukrainian economy. We were always getting close to that level, it even increased in comparison to the number that we had in the year 2021 in US dollars. Also, in the dollar equivalent, we've got the GDP per person per capita, which is calculated by the numbers of population that are provided by the Institute of Demography. The GDP is still much lower in comparison to 2021, and it's only 79% of it. But if you calculate it as far as what was done on the territories that were in the 2021 under control of Ukrainian government, and what's in under control of Ukrainian government right now, definitely it's slightly grew out. But due to the structural changes that came as a result of the war, we are still not reaching enough to restore it, even though we continue growing, no matter the fact that the war continues. And by the way, such thing that GDP at the level of 1.8%, this is more than GDP of European Union, which is 2025. It increased by 1.6%, and more than GDP of Eurozone, which is up by 1.5%. Next slide, please. As Hlib mentioned, the energy situation has worsened as much as possible in the January and February due to the weather. There was a high demand of the electric energy, and the terror of Russia continues on, and it leads to the fact that the deficit of electric energy have increased very much. Following the formula, following the calculations that you can judge based on the public information, publicly accessible information, in the months of January and February, in the last week of January was slightly warmer, and the deficit at the level of 30% from the need, even with the coverage of its import. Due to the fact that the price caps got increased, the import have grown substantially, and we have also integrated the government condition for the state-run companies to import 50% of their need, which is also impacted on the growth of an import. We talk about such companies as Ukrzaliznytsia, as Naftogaz, and other big state-run companies. In the certain hours, the trans-border crossing of the import was 100% used, which also means that we have used it as well as possible, and we try to cover our needs as much as possible. It's a pity, but the destruction of the supply grid line would also led to the fact that even the imported electric energy, it was very difficult to deliver it to the districts and areas that suffered a lot. I'm talking about Kyiv, Odessa, Dnipro, and Zaporizhia. So the ones that, the strikes were most concentrated there, even though the western part of the country was also under the deficit of the energy and they had power outages. Our international partners have substantially invested into the fact that we would shift this genocide in Ukraine, and Naftogaz received an additional credit grant funds in order to procure some gas for the final of the heating season, and we also received more than 700 tons of energy equipment in the recent weeks. That's an equipment that's currently used to do the repairs, and the government also implemented the program to support householders, associations, and the private residents with business, in particular grants for small business and also credit for small and medium companies to procure energy generation equipment. Next slide, please. So the first marker that we usually get by the end of the month, this is the business and consumer confidence markers, and so basically we can see that there's a potential drop of those data, and they have substantially dropped. Nevertheless, not everything is as bad as we think. Like, for instance, Ukrainians continue buying new and used vehicles, in particular the electric ones. Next slide, please. We also have some of the first results of how energy impacted the industry. We've got the drop of the metal production. In addition to the crisis as of January the 1st, 2026, Ukraine have got a CPAM regime that was not postponed, no matter our expectations, due to the fact that we say that we are under the war and we have the time to postpone that regime, it is still in action, and the impacts first and foremost on the energy industries, energy consuming industries, the energies, the industries that consume a lot of energy. That relates in particular to the cement industry, also to the definitely to metal production, and also fertilizer manufacturing, and also influence by GMK Center. They say that it's affected about 15% of Ukrainian export due to the fact that that regime requires additional payments or contribution from Ukrainian manufacturers. It leads to the fact that their products might be even non competitive on the external market due to the increase of their manufacturing expenses. Uh, Thank you, Natalia. I'm going to give the floor to Lazar with the review of the situation in the monetary sector and the markets. As we shift to inflation, yes, year after year, it has dropped from 8% to in December to 4% in January. The increase month to month of prices went up to 0.7%. It has touched a broad-based slowdown. The NBU explains the positive dynamics with the reduction of labor market imbalances with the harvests of previous year and the high competition from imported product, in particular from the dairy products. The core CPI, which reflects rather fundamentally the inflation, have decreased even further to 7% year to year, and which has basically caused by the drops of the inflation of the processed foods like services, like policies like bread and also grain and dairy. And we expect a further disinflation in the coming months, but a smaller magnitude due to, like it was expected in the past, due to the in particular due to the disruptions in energy and deficit. As we talk to the further disinflation, we've got finally the cycle of drop of the 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 NBU decided to drop the discount rate from to 12%, and they also upgraded their progress in the forecasted inflation by the end of 2026 was reviewed towards higher from 6.6% to 7.4%. We also got the trajectory of changes of the discount rate. As you can see on this graph, it became more conservative. If you look at the previous forecast, then we expected the 6 drops of the discount rate throughout the 2026, but now NBU expects only 2 in January and also in March. No matter there's the deflation, magnitude in the following months, we still expect the inflation to grow all the way to 7.5%, which is also the same market that we had in the months of January. Let us also take a look here on the direction of the market, on the change of the monetary position. For instance, let's look at the ratios from the states of state obligations, which talks about the cost of capital on different horizons. If you look at the short-term obligations, they are quite high throughout the previous year, even though it is on the level that are very close to the discount rate of the National Bank of Ukraine, which reflects high inflation risks that are related to the war and the lengthy damage of infrastructure business. If you looked about long-term premiums, they have quit falling, which thinks that the market views the energy-driven price pressure as transitory for this current horizon. Also, in the fourth quarter, the yields became smaller, and as the 1 year, for securities, and that just tells us that there is the increasing demand on the long-term things, and the members of the market, they try to go and secure the high rates before the National Bank of Ukraine would drop the discount rate. As you go into the international sector, the trend on the deficit of the trade balance is still preserved. We don't have any upgrades, novelties here. This is happening due to the stagnation of our export operation and increase of an import. And the previous data allow us to assess which exactly sectors that are responsible for the such increasing of the import. In the fourth quarter 2025, the import operation increased by 29% the year over year, and it's been growing or remained the same following the broad spectrum of sectors. Nevertheless, the largest and the most important investor into the 50% of growth was in the machine building, machinery equipment and transport, which is being explained by the imports for the war and also energy equipment for renewing the infrastructure. Also, in the last quarter of 2025, there was a substantial growth of mineral products once again due to the record import of the electric energy and gas. And also, we also have got unclassified informal trade, even though it's hard to identify it, but as far as for what stands behind it, most likely it covers the so-called gray imports and also packages that are below 150 euro, which is the tax level of taxation. If you look at the products that are related to the electric energy, in particular our adaptation to the deficit of electric energy, then here you can see that there is a direct import of electric energy and also electric batteries, in particular portable ones, battery storages. According to the assessment of the member of the market, the general capacity of such batteries, we talk about the EcoFlow gates and so on, and with the homes and businesses, it goes to 1.6 gigawatt hours, with about 3 gigawatt hours of total output. In particular, 2025, the spending of imports of the battery storage should reach 1.5 billion, which is 2.5 times more than we have used on the direct import of the electric energy. Thank you, Lazar. That's very interesting. Now we go to the portion which is somewhat related to the situation in the energy sector. But how about the situation with the budget? Sasha, do you have any relations with the energy crisis? Do you see what stands behind the numbers? Oksana Myronenko, the economist. Yes, thank you, Hlib. Let's talk about the public finance, and we'll talk with the state budget inflow and the tax inflows for the January this year. Overall, we've got the drop in the dynamics in the month-over-month income of this year, which is explained by seasonality. At the same time, the energy crisis and the complicated, difficult, and cold winter also impacted the dynamics. If you look in details on the structure of the inflows, then you can see that inflow for the tax of the private person, they've increased by 21% due to the fact that their average, the salary went up. But month over month, that thing has dropped due to the fact that there was a very high December batch, which was established by the payments of premiums and reimbursement for the unused vacations, so on and so forth. As far as the rent goes for the using of minerals, the incoming for the January, they have increased twice as much, once again due to the very low comparison base, due to that was related to the low prices on the natural resources. But in the general monthly extent, the growth was a little bit less, which is 8%. When you look at the inflow from the excesses, due to the fact that there was the euro integrational process, but in comparison to December 2025, they dropped by 25%, and the excess tax They increased in the 1st of January this current year, which stimulated the procurement before there was a change of the rates. As far as that imports VAT, the inflow started growing to 10% year to over year, but also they decreased by 28% in comparison to December 28, once again due to seasonality. As far as the internal VAT, domestic VAT, there is an 8% drop year over year. In January 2026, the gross domestic VAT hit a record. There were almost 59 billion hryvnias, which is 18% more than we had in the January 2025, and also 45% more month over month. But the reimbursement of VAT was also growing to 24 billion hryvnias, which is 1.5 times more than we had in January 2025, and also 80% more than what we had in the December 2025. So the balance is still positive. The domestic VAT is positive, but the dynamics overall is negative. And also in comparison to the January of this year, the year 2025, the inflow from the domestic VAT is dropped by 3 billion. As far as the expenditures from the previous year and the dynamics in the months of December, the general expenditures were 923 billion hryvnias, which more than 50% went to the needs of the more, 54% came from the domestic resources, and 18% was from the defense aid. The overall expenditures in December were twice as high as they were in November, and also 32% higher than what it was in the December 24. As you watch on this graph, in the December 2024, the expenditures on the war, they were 2.4 times larger than they were in the November year over year. And when you look at the December, they also grew by 46%. Also, months over months, the defense also was growing as a result of the defense aid and also the local sources. In the non-defense expenditures, the biggest expenditures were on the utilities and expenses. In the December 2025, we used 15 times more than it was in January 24, which is 8 billion hryvnias, and that is due to the fact that there was the program of the energy support of the reserve funds. As far as the social protection expenditures, they grew by 52% months over months and also 12% year over year. As far as what relates to the annual expenditures, we in 2025, before the full-fledged invasion, the taxes went very, very steep high. In 2025, they reached 5.5 trillion hryvnias, which is 22% more than what we had for the whole year 2024. As you see, the biggest factor is the war expenditures, and together with defense aid, they reached almost 3.5 trillion hryvnias, which is 34% more than what we had in the year 24. And as you see it on this graph, the expenses on the expenditures on the war, they are growing more and more since the first rise in 2024, and in the 2025 they were 2.4% higher in comparison to what we had in the year 2022 based on the domestic supply. Let's look at the expenditures that are non-military. The most of the dynamics are caused by the defense portion of the budget, and the largest contribution was done at the cost of the internal sources, which they basically rose to 755 billion, which is 39% year over year, which is 76% of total increase. The defense aid have raised a little less by 126 billion, which is 19% year to year and 13% of total increase. In such a way, the military expenses that were almost 90% of growing of expenses in the year 2025. And if you look at the non-military expenses, they remained more or less the same. And the biggest dynamics was showed by the debt service expenses. They increased by 54 billion hryvnias, which is about 5% of the total increase. If you look at the other expenses, they will remain roughly unchanged, and the expenses of the social protection, they even dropped. This is all I've got for now. Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. This is clear. This is the price that we pay for the war, the price for the defense contract, which we also do for Europe. It goes up and out, and it also becomes higher, more costly in the direct expense. We can see that as far as expenses to the defense goals for the 2024, and also if you look at the intermediary impact due to the destruction of infrastructure and the negative effects from that and some of the other losses that Natalia is about to share, but we all recognize the Darnica heat generation plant. Natalia, how would you explain that with the deficit of the energy and other factors that are related to the shelling of infrastructure and impact on the economy? Thank you. Since we do not have yet the statistics information from the State Statistics Agency of what's happening in January, we can nevertheless we can have some pulling from the people, and we can see that the crisis hit Ukrainian companies really well today. As you said, Hlib, 80% of the companies following the questionnaire from the European Business Association, they have identified that they felt the impact. Only 20% responded that they did not feel it. More than 50% of the companies that were questioned by the Institute of Economical Studies, they said that they are sensitive to the energy supply, water supply, and the heating supply, which we didn't have that in the previous challenge when there was a deficit of energy. So this time we also have the water supply and the heating supply, especially in Kiev, to my mind. Majority of the companies, they have also mentioned that what is happening right now impact a lot on their expenses, because they had to buy energy at the higher prices, which is related to the imported energy because of the increase of the price cap. It is higher, as well as the internal energy, which is also growing due to the high demand. And if you look for the current date for the month of February, in the February over November, the prices on energy went by 60%. This is very substantial growth, and big company like the metallurgy companies, they also say that there is also large technological risks due to the fact that there are disruptions in the energy, that they can violate the technology process, and that would cause additional damage. And for them to get back to the normal situation, and many of such companies, they have just dropped the production so that there would be not so much risk engaged. Many companies, following the questionnaire of European Business Association, they changed the regime of their operations, trying to fit the energy supply regime, which was centralized and something that they received from Ukrenergo. And also half of them have also dropped in their production, and additional decreasing of manufacturing is happening not just because there is no energy supply for the energy, but also the demand is dropping, and therefore the demand is dropping in all of the on all of the links, and that's a chain reaction that definitely impacts on the tempo of the growth of economy and economical activity in general. Right now, most of the economists say that they do not lay the expenses growth, cost growth on the final prices because the demand is limited, and that basically preserves the inflation processes. But definitely, as the time would go, that all of that will be transferred to the consumer. The very substantial portion of the companies that were questioned by the European Business Association, they have uh, instead they have stated that they have already installed their alternative energy sources or generation capacities. Uh, it's either in the storage batteries or some panels, and 23% of the Soviet companies, they said that they have received the independence. Very interesting example is from the kernel, because they're in production of oil, and they also do their energy as they burn the shells from the seeds. As I already mentioned, the fact that the companies install, like we have got 35% of the responded that they've got the storage systems, 26% responded that they have installed the solar powers, and we also have some companies that are producing the electric energy from gas or biogas, and the smallest number of the companies have installed some wind power generation. Next slide, please. Since the companies now provide some broad feedbacks about what is happening with them, how they feel themselves, nevertheless, we don't have the very in-depth statistics information. It was quite interesting for us to look at the cloud of words, which words dominate in the comments from the companies. Since I remember that there were small companies that, it's much easier to find such companies. So the keyword is generator, which gets us back once again to the fact that the cost of the energy from the generator and other installed means of manufacturing energy is much higher than what companies get from the grid, and that definitely impacts on the manufacturing expenses. For the development of the independent generation, the companies, they indicate that they very much need financing. In particular, the project that was introduced by the government, the energy support for private entrepreneurs, for more than 15,000 companies, they reached out to get the support, and they received 144 million hryvnias in grants. Most of those companies are in the HoReCa business and also the grocery retails, since that project allows them to procure generators, even though 15,000 hryvnias for generators, this is not too much of a big amount, and they also allows them to cover the expenses on fuel. Of course, this is not a lot of money, but even such small contribution can smack the small business, which is very much very sensitive to the results of such power outages. And the most important thing is, in comparison to the previous blackouts, that the small business suffers a lot from the deficit of heat supply and water supply. In particular, restaurants were saying that they review the menu in order to survive the power outages. They also make menu very simple, or they are very picky as far as what groceries to purchase and how to work when the fridges are not operational. Uh, Generally speaking, following this questionnaire from the European Business Association, they companies stated that they wanted to be more they wanted the power outages, roster to be more accurate, and they all want to know when exactly would there be power and when there would be no power. And it's very hard, and sometimes the companies that they import energy, they're not supposed to go into the power outages. They also suffer because whenever there's an emergency power outages, then the imported energy, it's impossible to deliver to them, especially if there's damage to the grid. It's quite possible that in the future, and it was already identified by the National Bank as a technical summary, that we would probably undergo the increase of the energy for the electric power and also other things for the forms, because of the expenses to the repair, the expenses on the restoration needs to be covered by certain funds, in particular by the state companies and by the government. And we might not have enough funds to cover at the expense of the international partners. Another thing that the companies would like to see the government do, that would like to do the auctions regarding the introduction of the new generation. And of course, there was another political proposal that we need to set an order into the pricing policy for the energy sector, so that we decrease the impact of the debts that have accumulated. And even if there are successful repairs, or maybe there's going to be more sun out and there's going to be a better generation, there is still a substantial risk of very strong impact on the economical activity caused by the power outages, and also perhaps certain companies that would not just decrease the volumes of their manufacturing, but if that relates to the small companies, that they would even shut down. And that is not just going to impact on the GDP, but also increase the level of unemployment. This is it from my end. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. So let's do a quick summary of our today's presentation before we go to the discussion with the participation of our guests. The energy situation in Ukraine have deteriorated significantly in the months of January and February due to the intense Russian shelling on the energy generation and heat generation institutions. At the same time, there was very, very cold weather, which has also impacted a lot on all of the sectors of the economy. And with all mentioned, we have observed the decrease of the inflation rates, but following the assessment of the National Bank regarding the follow-up changes of the monetary policies, we also see that those changes, they became more conservative. Imports played an important role in adapting to strikes on the energy system. In particular, when you look at the electric energy storage batteries in different forms in 2025, there were imports $1.5 billion worth. As far as the restoration of the energy supply, it caused the increase of the budget spending on the civilian expenses, but also there is also increasing of the expenditures on the war, still very important and dominates a lot. And of course, while Ukrainian businesses and citizens show resilience, they nevertheless, both business and citizens, they still need a lot of support. In particular, what relates to the support of the business, we'll talk about that. But this was going to be our second portion. We'll have the presentation by Andrii Teliupa as an advisor for the Minister of Economy. But first and foremost, I would like to summarize everything regarding the economy impact. I'm going to give the word to Artem Vdovychenko, who is the head of the Department of the Economical Analysis Department of the National Policies of the National Bank of Ukraine. And basically, when somebody asks to me, in particular, somebody from our international partners, as far as what is the impact of the variable situation with the energy supply as a result of Russian strikes to economy, I usually refer everybody to the assessment by the National Bank of Ukraine, because as of the end of 2022, the National Bank of Ukraine have established the practice in their analytics products to do very accurate calculation of that impact. So, Artem, let us go on that assessment real quick. A National Bank of Ukraine have just updated the macro forecast. So let us look rather in depth. How do you assess the impact of the shelling that we observed, as far as what got what was damaged to the energy and sector, manufacturing, and the prices. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for very in-depth, informative presentations that you just had. As far as the response to the question, generally speaking, the energy deficit, that's a big problem today for the economy of Ukraine. And we do the assessments of the deficits on the regular basis, and also the impact of those deficits on the inflation and in its form. I also want to say that based on our assessments, in particular the data from the energy sector and alternative analysis of the internet events, following our assessment, the deficit of the energy that got established in the January 2025 and January 26 and December 2025, we have not yet had ever such a deficit for the energy. Definitely there was the series of factors that supplemented here. First of all, Russia started immersed strikes on the energy system. There was the record set by the number of strikes on the energy structures. And another factor was the low atmospheric temperatures, because we've got unusual cold winter, unusual cold month. It all started in December. It continued in January. The average temperature in Ukraine was 4 degrees lower than the usual. And of course, such low temperature leads to the fact that the need in electric energy was growing, and therefore if you cannot procure that energy via the generation or the import, then you will have very large deficits. As far as it goes, let's go into the numbers straight away. Regarding the assessments of the electricity deficit, we have increased our assessments, our recent assessment of the energy deficit for the quarter 4 2025 from 4% to 7%. Let me just say it right away that these are the assessments that are averaged. Like on average, we, following the quarter 4 2025, we did not cover our needs in energy by 7%. Generally speaking, year over year, such a deficit was assessed at the level of 2%. We have got quite good situation in the summer when there was good weather in the summer, and Russians, they were not attacking us in the very active manner, the electric energy. We have got quite long period of non-deficit functionality of our economy, and because of that, the average all year annual average is 2%, and then we increased it to 7%. Regarding the 2026, we have checked the energy deficit, and we raised it from 6% to 12%, and the annual we have increased from 3.3% to 6%. Few words, how do we look at the assessment of deficit? The most troublesome question right now is the assessment of the need in the energy, because this is something that we cannot observe. The need is some marker that's like totally numeric, which is based on the history of the consumption and series of our assumptions. We analyze the historical data regarding how well did the economy of Ukraine consume the energy in the periods when there were no strikes from the side of Russians, when we were more or less fixing what was damaged, and we also adjust that number by temperature. We slightly understand, we talk about the winter temperature, because the summer is okay. We more or less understand how additional need every single negative 1 degree of the temperature drop, how much need does it bring. We do some corrections, and we get the annual monthly need for the energy. After that, we check what is being generated in our system. How do we export? How do we import? Export doesn't play any role in the recent months because it's totally zero. And having such a difference between our need in generation and import, we assess our deficit. Regarding the impact on the economy, on the GDP. Let me just give you the numbers. We have got the energy impact on GDP at the level of negative 0.2 percentage, and if not for that negative impact, we would probably have the increasing of the GDP on the level of 2%, and the total deficit for the 26, which is 6% of annual deficit, they would bring, following our assessment, that would get 0.4 percent of GDP. How do we do the assessments? We look at the expenses tables and the State Statistics Service, so they have just upgraded the data, and they're more or less fresh as far as numbers goes. And then we assess how well, how badly do different types of economical activity, how dependent are they from the energy supply. Also, in our days, National Bank of Ukraine have conducted some surveys of the companies following different forms of economical activities to identify how sensitive are they to the power outages. And likewise, in the expenses sheets, we have also got the contribution of different types of economical activities to GDP. And as we integrate the data together, we go into the average elasticity regarding the impact of 1% of the deficit of the energy impacting the GDP. As much as I remember during the discussion of the inflation report that this number was being already voiced, we nowadays use the elasticity ratio 0.1, which is like 0.1 deficit of energy gets 0.1 from the GDP. So based on those numbers, we just model the negative impact of the deficit to economy. As far as inflation goes, the inflation goes situation as far as the inflation is the following. First thing I want to say that we have also taken into consideration the energy deficit to inflation in the year 2026, because once again, as you have seen in our upgraded macro forecast, the forecast of inflation is increased to 0.9 percentage, which is not net impact of the electric deficits. There's a series of factors, but also the understanding of the fact that there's a deficit of electric energy. The energy is going to be more costly and it's going to be additional impact on the business. We have raised the bar for the inflation, and we have got two channels here. First of all, we talk about the administrative prices, as Nataliia mentioned. We have got some technical assessments that these strikes on the energy infrastructure, they would lead to the fact that we would have to rebuild and restore it, and these are the expenses that are sooner or later is going to be laid upon the shoulders of the consumers. We do not expect the growth of prices by the end of the season, but we also expect that in the future those rates will be adjusted. And the second channel, that's a channel of the expenses, the energy that's expensive, that comes from the alternative sources or imported energy, that definitely leads the increasing of the costs, and that's going to impact inflation. We, truly speaking, we watch the situation by the components of inflation. We have got some data updated for the January, February data is going to be provided soon. And I think that very soon we would be able to see where do we move as far as inflation goes, because we do have some sectors that are more dependent on the electric energy. They're more sensitive, and that's where we want to see those impacts and their more quality assessment and perhaps the resetting of them. Thank you very much, Artem. That's quite interesting that we see, based on the deficit of 6% annual, while we have 12 in the first quarter, that you got quite conservative approach to the situation in the three other quarters, starting with spring, which does not have such an assessment that the spring will come, the deficit will be done, and everything will be just wonderful, just like as we used to live as we had in the 25 till October when we started suffering from the shelling. I think we need to take that to consideration. That's going to be separate subject to discuss to everybody, in particular the business community, because nobody knows what's going to be in the summer times. But the repetition of the scenario of the 2024, when in the summer times there was the largest energy deficit as of that time, as of the summer 2024, it was very hard for the retails because the retail trade, because there were so many fridges used, and the other options, due to the destruction of the energy system, that's quite realistic option. It's one of the realistic scenarios. I would like to invite to the word Mr. Andrii Teliupa, who is the advisor of the Ministry of Economy. He's in the position of the deputy minister, and Andrii specialized on the program of business support. Together with Andrii, we have agreed that he, at first, with matter of few words, he would just share how government responded to the challenges that are set in front of the business, what programs are there, how they're being implemented, and then we'll have representatives of different sectors of the business. And if we have enough time, then perhaps Andrii will be able to respond well to the questions and issues that we will have in those speeches by other members of our discussion. So Andrew, the floor is yours. Yes, greetings to all of you. Yes, Ministry of Economy and the government, in our forecast, we try to be as conservative as National Bank goes as far as the energy goes, because our principle is that we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. And even as we look at the winter season, the government was preparing it very actively. So we've been doing many meetings with the business representatives. We were having discussions with the associations regarding how best would it be to help the business to survive the winter and also to develop the economy in the conditions as we have. Because if we were, when we started doing writing the industrial strategy of Ukraine together with the World Bank and together with UNIDA, with the OECD, so we had very clearly stated that at least 50% of the success is in the future industry of Ukraine. What impacts a lot is the price per energy, and we worked about how to establish that question from the strategic standpoint. But prior to winter, we had this question of even the presence of the electric energy, not just the price of the electric energy. And therefore, we as the government, we try to resolve it strategically using a couple of strategic paths. The first path is to preserve the existing generation. Definitely, it's the construction of the protection structures and also the air defense. And many of the things, like we cannot impact a lot here. And the second direction here was the increasing of the imports of electric energy, the physical crossing of the border, and also permits, in particular, to allow the economy import the electric energy while there's a deficit. And we have seen some priorities here. First of all, in minimization of the potential actions by Ukrenergo, while in the summer we've got the drop of the imports of electric energy depending on the price to electric energy. And also we have initiated the transition to the long-term contracts for the imports of electric energy to make sure that the business would really have an opportunity to contract the long-term contract on the lengthy periods, not like we had it in the past, like for day-long contracts or 24-hour contracts, so that they can do planning real well. And the third thing, which is very important, is the support of the business and the support and the decentralized generation and cogeneration and the system of storing energy, electric energy. And definitely here we've got many business representatives, because if you look at the big generation, like private generation, in the beginning of last year, there was a selection finished to rebuild the new generation. There was a commission's decision approved, and we are just waiting for some of the first new generations are going to be about to be set into power, to be commissioned. And basically, we want to give a forecasted things set by the Ukrenergy to basically warranty the return of investments. And so this selection was already in place. And I think that the second wave of this competition is about to prepare with some conditions to the left bank and right bank, where there is more and less deficits, so that investors, they have got a better differentiated price on the resource. This is from the standpoint of the large scale generation. And there was also another emphasis on the construction of the medium and small generation. And here we have started the program of financing, because we could see that the main problem is the presence of the financial resource for that. And another problem is the presence of their equipment. As far as financing goes, in the months of June 2024, together with National Bank of Ukraine, we signed a memorandum to support the energy. And I think that there were 14 banks, almost all the largest banks, they have joined this memorandum, and they have signed their consent to give credit to the energy products at the rate of 13.5%. So that's the rate. This is a little lower than average as far as the loans goes, and in such a way they support the development of the generation. Following the last information from the National Bank of Ukraine for the month of January this year, for the last 1.5 years, the bank supported about 3,000 loans at the total cost of 33 billion hryvnias. And following the assessments of the banks, that would go into the reconstruction of about 2 gigawatts of the generation or power storage. And so such a memorandum, in fact, work, and such a program is still in action. And the National Bank observes the increasing of the portfolio for energy loans. Also, as far as our state program 579, we've set a separate program for the construction of the power generating system and also energy storage systems. We've got an excess up to 100 million hryvnias. That program already work. And also by the end of this year, when we see that there's increasing of demand and there is a need to do more and more construction, we thought that we need to increase the limit. So I initiated that, and we have, just like Madame Nataliia said, following the 579, we've got the limit to 250 million hryvnias to allow the average and relatively large industrial business that they would have an opportunity to take a loan and do create cogeneration on their own capacities. There was a proposal from the business to say, let's set 1 billion hryvnias per as far as limit goes. We are restricted from the financial standpoint. The financing for 579 is more or less the same on the 18 billion hryvnias to reimburse the rate, and these are the money that we get due to the support of the World Bank. These are not the direct budget funds. And therefore, in such a way, we try to incentivize the construction of medium and large generation, and we have just launched, after the beginning of this new year, new programs to support the small and medium business and predominantly micro business. So the program that you've been talking about is the one that have launched the energy credit for the private entrepreneurs and for the house owners associations and also for the citizens. So we have launched this program to cover the levels of their consumptions. As far as the private entrepreneurs, we've got this program of a one-time payment at the level of 15,000 hryvnias. We know that this is a quite small amount, and it works also in links to the discounted credit at 0% to procure energy equipment, which is 10 million hryvnias in volume and less. And therefore, anybody can go into procurement energy equipment or energy storage and get 15,000 hryvnias that are irreversible loan, and we can support the small business. As far as credits goes, 579, we got 250 billion, which is now goes 1% up to 5 years. So that's almost free credit, that's free of charge. And in such a way, we also work together with National Bank of Ukraine in order to decrease the question of a collateral, so that by using the variety of tools for risking and warranties from our international organization, the European Commission, that we would also decrease the question that is related to the collateral for the business, so that they can have an opportunity to get more credits. So in such a way, we try to support the small business and medium business, but the biggest problem is with the large-scale business, because we worked with the representatives of big companies. That we were talking about the big companies like metal companies and also cement companies. That the cost of energy is the most critical there, and we have also did the package of the solution which is in the agreement with the other central authorities, which allowed the energy industries to get the prognosis and long-term resource, and that would allow them to also get contracts into the retail market to get prices for the quarter, for half a year, and for a year from the prices for the energy atom and Euratom and other suppliers. And a lot was said about the specialized auctions and special rates from energy atom. How relevant is it during the military, during the martial law days? It's quite disputable question, because from the standpoint of economy, we just put the problem from one pocket to another, and we somehow try to get compromised version, and on the basis of analytics we just approach the thing that need to work. So here we've got most of the focus on the fact to make sure that the big business, large scale business, that they are provided with the sustainable rates, so that we allow them to do it in the most transparent and into the most market-worthy method. So we try to move it as it goes. As you see, all of the programs, they already launched, the programs already work. As far as private entrepreneurs, we see that there is active demand. We also see that there's lots of new generation that's being built in Ukraine. If many were laughing about the overprice of gigawatt by Zelensky, we can also see that following the data that were spoken of by Nataliia here, we can see that in the last 2 years, we have commissioned more than 2 gigawatts at least. So the generation is being built. It's built not because of the good condition, because we would all want to have the centralized generation at the low rates. But if we as a government, we cannot guarantee that, then we do max efforts to the support of the business, to the development of the decentralized generation. And in such a way, we also hope that that would allow our business to operate in a rather forecasted way. And another thing that was quite pleasant for me, as far as the data in that questionnaire, we heard that there was over 90% of Andrii, something is wrong with your connection. Something is wrong with the internet connection from Mr. Andrii. Andrii, are you with us? Generally speaking, the main idea was already communicated. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you mentioned about the investments of the business into the power generation. This is one of the questions that would refer to this year. After the summer 2024, we've seen that there were so many businesses that invested into the photovoltaics and also battery storages. That's why the situation is not as bad. And so we were talking about different sizes of the business. We've got the businesses of different sizes, definitely. We've got some retailers of tea all the way to the metallurgy manufacturers, as Mr. Andrii mentioned. And so we're going to talk to Svetlana Kobalyova, who is the co-owner of the tea house. They work simultaneously in the retail and also into what was called in the so-called uh, public nutrition, but not really nutrition, but in public drinking. So they uh, have impact into the food industry with a focus in Dnipro and Kyiv, but Dnipro is the region where the situation was quite heavy with the electric energy, and even more Kyiv, and also Oleh Krykavskyi, who represents ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih. He is the head of the government relations department. They're one of the largest consumers of energy, and also Dnipropetrovsk region, and also Kryvyi Rih is a troublesome area. And the Association of Weapon Makers of Ukraine, Valentyna Vedrovska, she's the head of the department with the government relations. That's quite an interesting branch. It's not that it's just growing, but it's also crucially important during the days of war, not because of the economical impact, because there's suppliers of what allows us to defend from Russian aggression. I hope that we would also have Borys Shestopalov joining us. They are also very large manufacturer for the bread related and grain business. This is critically important business as far as all of the industry that is very much dependent on the energy in the latter in the vast majority they're present in Zaporizhia region. So Svetlana will start it with you, since that is the business in accordance to which the energy strike, we could all see how you were doing throughout this couple of months, because these are the small coffee shops or stores that were forced to shut down or operate out of the generator. The peculiarity of your business is that it is three sectors in which the company work all at the same time. What was the impact, and what lessons learned have you got, and what will you prepare in the next season in case if the war will not be terminated? The impact on us was huge, and the only thing that on one side was forecastable is that we've been preparing to that since 2022. So we did have energy independence on every single store of ours in all of our great stuff, and we had either generators and also batteries and inverters. We in our manufacturing before Shahid hit us, we had complete energy and efficient. We had large generator that was functioning, that was providing with the electric energy and the continuous work. What did we come across? For the manufacturing, we had to rebuild all of the energy system of our own, because we had a new facility as of the months of August. And as we were looking for an opportunity to restore the construction, we also had to restore the generator and rebuild the gas supply system to this new facility. That was difficult, and that required additional investments. As far as our stores go and the stores that are in our chain, the situation was more or less normal, because, as I said, we were more or less supported, and we were maintaining the system for a couple of years. We knew well in which country do we live in, and in what situation do we live in, and it was more or less okay. It was more difficult in terms of our our manufacturing manufacturing company, because it was very large. We refer ours to small or medium business, and our investment turned out about 1 million hryvnias, and that was not an easy thing to do, because it was mentioned today about the loans and opportunity to get the loans, but there's a small problem that nobody pays attention to. We can say that whenever businesses they lose everything, their balances they are showed as negative, and banks do not want to release any credits, because because they do not, it's not that they do not have a collateral, but they're also financial markers. They're so different. And so we had additional complexities here. Yes, you suffered from the double strikes. Svetlana was with us, on our podcast. In the fall, there was a Shahid that hit the manufacturing in Dnipro. That was a very substantial risk that got implemented, more than anybody expected. So, Andrii, you have a feedback here. Yes, I would like to just say this thing that is, I'm very pleased to see Svetlana here as a representative of business who used the grant on restoration that I was personally launching on the program level. So I'm very pleased about the fact that it starts operations, and we hope that more and more business would be, helped by the new program of securing the war-related risks that we have launched as of this new year. Definitely the war-related risks. Since we made a decision to remain in Dnipro, we decided to remain there. This is a very relevant program for us. Thank you, Svetlana. I think that we will reach back to you today. Let us also look at the region. Within the region, let us look at the opposite business by size. Oleh Krykavskyi, are you with us? Yes, I'm here, and I hope that you can hear me, you can see me. Yes, we can hear you well, we can see you well. Basically, Andrii have just recollected the challenges that exist in front of the large-scale consumers of the electric energy. On one side, for the small business, in particular, the story that we've just heard, it's kind of clear to people because all of us, we can see that it's clear that some businesses like Tea House, they're stronger, they're able to survive no matter what. But there was also businesses with a weaker business model and they have to shut down, and we can see that. There were also small businesses, they had to either shut down for vacation or completely have a shutdown. But the large scale consumers, only perhaps we as economists, we recollect about you together with the government because we understand that is, yes, that is all clear, but you cannot basically connect the generator to Kryvyi Rih Stal. Even if you talk about the imported energy, just like Natalia was raising the question that, perhaps the business model prices, when the prices, the companies would afford procuring large energy, but how can you deliver the energy if the enemy tries to destroy the delivery paths to the bigger companies of Ukraine? How do you respond to that? How did you respond to those challenges? And truly speaking, we've heard a lot from the representative of the large-scale industry. I heard about only one bad news about FedEx because they have stopped the manufacturing. Nothing else was delivered by the metallurgy representatives, which means like they, as just like Tea House prior to the Shahid strike, that they managed to adapt, as the Tea House did since the 2024. Or is there anything else that the state helped you with? Truly speaking, this is basically a very fooling silence, because the fact that we are being helped is because we are the portion of the large-scale transnational company, and throughout the full-scale invasion days, we have utilized their assistance for over $1 billion. This is just extremely large amounts, because we do not earn that much even in a couple of years, and we use that amount basically to make the company work. The company operates at the level of 50% right now. Therefore, the large scale business also very large problems. It's a pity, but very soon we'll have negative news from us, because in the month of February we plan to shut down one of the blooming of the manufacturing, something that was worked to the export operation to European Union. because I want to say that that last year we were quite we were achieving quite a good success previous year because we had a good treaty regarding the Euro because we had an extension of non-duty trade till month of June. So we have become very effective and efficient in the European market. And in the previous year, out of the manufacturing that we had, we managed to export up to 3 million tons of steel. And we have exported steel to the European market. It would be good, but in the December, we found out that in the January 2026, we're going to go CBAM applied to Ukraine, and we calculated that would be $63 to $90, depending on the type of the product per ton of the product. Therefore, this is one of the two reasons why our economical situation of us comparing to the European situation, that we are not in a good condition. And second thing, getting back to the electric energy, we pay one of the largest costs in Europe in comparison to the European Union. As far as the European Union, we have the resolution of the government regarding the increased in imports up to 90%. This ratio was floating. This is not, the rock solid, figure. We understand that it fluctuates, and we have good conditions. It used to be 60, 70, now it's 90%. Now the problem is, first of all, we're talking about the very short-term import contract, like a day ahead. Before, second thing, when you buy it and when on the next day there is no physical opportunity to import it to the company. We had, for instance, several cases where we failed to receive enough, and secondly, our traders sold it to the market at the cost of 0 hryvnia. No matter the fact that we bought it, we had to drop the manufacturing. We got some direct losses here. We, of course, are in the dialogue with the government. Everything that was mentioned by Mr. Andrii, we can say that the government can hear us. No matter the situation is difficult, we try to find a solution. I had a chance to read prior to my speech. I can see, I read some of the comments. Somebody said that this is not a market-based thing. I cannot agree with that, because the market is quite phenomenal. Because when there is a high deficit of energy, the price would not be completely considered a market price, because that's an artificial price. The second thing, the complete European approach, when the governments try to help with the rates to the governments, because the government cannot just sit and wait for it to go twofold, threefold, fourfold, sixfold, because the economy would just stop. And the governments from the multiple European countries, they interfere, especially the well-off countries like Germany intervened. In France, they've created the special mechanism in creation of the direct contracts between the consumers and the manufacturer, ADF company, the company that does the nuclear energy. In Poland, the trade unions, they protest a lot. They require from the government to drop the price on energy. So the approach is quite European. So as far as implementation of those mechanisms, the government does not want to do it in the non-market way, and the participants on the market, they do not want to do it in the non-market way. We are in the position that we'll probably go to the open-ended auctions, and we'll go to the market-related mechanisms of the direct contracts without, in the very transparent way. Colleagues, I just want to clarify one more thing. I think that the tariff setting question is very important for you, but you please explain to us, to the people who are so close to the activities of the great industrial companies, because as you lived in Kiev, some of you who live in Kiev, you could see how bad did it look even in the great city where you're just a regular consumer? How in such situations such companies would work, like companies as large as ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih, because you are in the very same situations of the unpredictable strikes from Russia. Where would they hit it? Where would they not hit? Where would you manage to take down while you have operations of the equipment? This is more sensitive than the microwave that can, collapse. How did you manage to maintain manufacturing? Did you suffer? And I hope that you did not suffer. We did suffer, but your colleagues, they suffered some losses due to the contingency situation. Was there aftermath? Yes, we suffered, and our sufferings were painful. And there's two situations. Situation one, when Ukrenergo, basically, they set the limits to every district, and district within its borders, they say their own limits. In our oblast, these are networks of grids by the tech. They just agree, but when you cannot agree with them about the blocking the consumption, those limits, they are set in the force matter, and then the company just have to, like for instance, we usually consume we usually consume 400 megawatts per hour, but we do 230, 250. We had limits 70 megawatts an hour. So the rest, in the peak hours, you have to think what to do with it. But usually you think about the import because you still somehow need to maintain your operations. And additionally, you cannot let people go to 5-7 hours out, not to pay them their payments. People are at work. The manufacturing needs to work. But the enemy was striking. Based on what I know from the news, the enemy was trying to hit new Kryvyi Rih very precise. How did you handle? Because sometimes if you even imported it, and what if the enemy tried to cut you off the grid? Yes, those substations, were there. We expected for the imports, and just recently, in the month of January, we failed to import what we paid for. That was, economically interesting story. Of course, once again, we were just talking about the limits. There's another story when there were contingency, cutoffs. That's, the worst situation, because even if you got 70 promised and if you finally get 10 or 0, because for our companies like ours, it's a disaster. We had a case. We got the Coxus, batteries that suffered due to the fact there was, in a disaster that happened. So one carbonate battery has just burnt. Carbonate battery, it's a process, and you cannot stop it. And basically, we've got large-scale diesel generators, but even though generators, they need 16 plus seconds to be launched, and such contingency turnouts, the chemical process stops, that the steel that that was supposed to be kept in the hot status, it's basically crystallizes, and the process stops, and then you cut off all that steel to allow the opportunity for the new steel to be generated. And that's quite labor intensive and not pleasant processes. So we handle that at the cost of the fact that we have the capacities functioning by 50%. We try to do the concurrent repairs. We try to cover one with another, because sometimes when something is down, we try to think it. We work and think about our own generation, co-generation. We definitely have limited resource and potential. That's very costly, but we still work. We've got our own, heat energy supply. We've got the technologies that allows us to do it, but we are not the company that can, roughly speaking, in a matter of couple of years, to do and to have the generation 250 megawatts. This is just impossible. In the larger extents, you show the Ukrainian flexibility Yes, so we try to be smart. We try to talk to the government. We try to import. The government hears us. We try to go away from the assessment about the imports contract that they had, because this is the very very high European prices, and you can call it the balancing market. When you buy something from Europe a day ahead, it happens that's the energy that for current time is not needed to the energy to Europe. When you go in the long-term context, nobody's interested in that. Even Europe is not interested in that a lot, because it means that you remove the cheaper resource from Europe and you transit it to Ukraine. They are just ready to use the rather more expensive resource, which is on the surface, something that they would not do tomorrow. But it is more expensive. And so the government works over that. Based on the presentation by Mr. Andrii, I understand that the government works on this question. It's being discussed right now. Let me just briefly talk to our colleagues as well, because our time is limited. We've got Borys Shestopalov just joining us. Borys, are you with us? Are you still traveling? We would very much want Mr. Borys. Yes, I will try to. I'm still driving on the highway. We've got almost no roads here, but we are returning to Kiev from Cherkasy from the business trip. So if we lose the connection, then as you are still online, let me just give you a question. If I'm not wrong, you were with us in the year 23 or 24 in the previous waves, and you were talking about the fact how in your business you build an independent generation. And it's quite interesting to me to find out how much did that help you to survive that period, and how, like in Zaporizhia, historically, your large portion of your business is in Zaporizhia, which is so close to the contact line. How accessible was the power energy for you, and how well did you manage to continue your production? Let me try to explain. We started construction, our own generation. Of course, we're not as large scale as a consumer as Arcelor, but nevertheless, we do need certain megawatts, and we consume quite substantial amounts of electric energy. I want to say the disruption with the energy is something that we feel not just in Zaporizhia. We are about to launch the new company on the manufacturing of flakes and processing of energy close to Kyiv in Brovary. I want to say that we had to purchase expensive equipment, lots of automation. We had to disconnect from the grid, and we launched the company on their own generators. Just because other than the quantity of energy, we talk about the quality, because it could be you could have 180 and 500 on the through phases. Then what can say we can just convert the pile of automatic things into the scrap. So we just do testing on the generator capacity. This is definitely not economical from this standpoint of the product's cost, but in order to launch the company and to preserve the automatics on it, this is what we are doing. We do the distributed generation. We even launched a company, which is basic company from the H group. We created the company FG Energy Services, because we came across this problem that we failed to find. We failed to find in Ukraine not a single company that would be open to us the comprehensive service. What I mean the energy audit, the support from the technological standpoint, and also the tenders, not to propose us to procure the equipment that they import or manufacture, but to do the tender for the best solution. And therefore, we were leading that decision by ourselves, because based on what I see, based on my understanding, we in our country, we do have an understanding how to resolve the question with households, because the 30 kilowatts market is closed, or potential manufacturers that do dozens of megawatts. The average Ukrainian company, if we talk about the food processing or food manufacturing, we talk in the range of 300 kilowatts to 1 megawatt. So on the market, we almost have no engineering company to provide to us the comprehensive service. Because of that, we've done that ourselves. We procured a couple of business models, but none of them survived. So we built everything in our own hand. We merged the sun energy, the cogeneration, and of course the battery storage system. We do that. We have even found lots of equipment in Europe. We are ready to receive that. We have started in Zaporizhia, where the first cogeneration was launched. We generate more to the grid, and first it was hard to connect to them, but we know how to do it in the proper terms, how to undergo the technical requirements, and we have done all that. I think the next generation is going to be much easier built, but we have got more calls. Can you decrease your own production and do more to the grid? We definitely will go to the grid. We push to the grid as much as we do, because most of our company, whether it's a bakery or processing, we all need heat, we all need steam. That's why for our construction, cogeneration is the solution that allows us to utilize all of the energy and almost all of the heat. But as we were building the company, as we were creating the holding, I was not calculating that we would need to business plan the self-provision with electric energy, because in the past we did try to connect to the grid. We did have terms of reference, but now it looks like we're just saving ourselves with our own hands. It is need to have Andrii here. You were talking about Zaporizhia. This is our ongoing question. It's like I've got the letter from your board because I'm not gonna give it to you because you don't have a document. Is there a program on crediting? Yes, it is there, but we're not going to give it to you because you're in the front line and there is no risk and there is no triage and we don't have limits of tech support. Wonderful. This is exactly how it looks like. But I say then, well, let's now to look for the solution. We have just got 4 cogeneration units in from Estonia. We imported it, and we would also be providing some more energy to the grid. We will be resolving questions, because what is the manufacturing that's operational today in the close to frontline territory? Each of the companies, that's 200 or 300 people that are in the salary. What are the companies that are not 2 or 3 people? 200 or 300 people that are not employed, that would be internally displaced, and we don't even ask for grants. Well, we ask for grants, but they are not given to us. Give us loans so that we would build our own generation. How does it look like? Yes, I totally agree. There's criteria by the National Bank. There are collateral deposits, there are dominants, we understand all that. But nevertheless, you need to understand us that we are in the martial law and we make some extraordinary solutions, or from the standpoint of energy supply, you have to make all of the energy decisions yourself. And from the standpoint of funds and regulation by the National Bank, there are collaterals, there are 3-month compliance, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to do something here. I'm not telling to everybody that, well, honestly saying, I'm saying that, but I quit speaking that. But I said that after we lost 3 companies on the occupied territories, hopefully for the temporary basis, and 2 companies are completely destroyed. All of the loans that were on those companies, we are covering them. Even though we don't have the companies, we do not have the source, but we have an understanding the banks are as much participants of the market. We have an understanding of the credit reputation. But I also think that still, considering the extraordinary situation of the situation, because we do not understand every single day whether our company would remain working or not, I would say that we need an extraordinary urgent solutions to allow us to the point receipt of resources to develop our own cogeneration, because let me underline that these are the credit loans, credit funds. We will return them and we are returning them. So Hlib, I can tell you this is how it works. What else can I tell you about the company? You have very clearly stated, and it's too bad that the National Bank is represented only by the Department of the monetary policies, fiscal policies. We do not have Sergei Nikolaevchuk, and so we would forward the words to him, and Sergei would forward it to them because we represent totally different sides of the business, even though from the technical standpoint we are the same industry, but we hear the same questions from the Tea House, from the HD groups, that these are the questions of accession to the credits. It's not the question of the level like the state save us, give us funds. I have also heard the dialogues about the rates. Yes, clearly it's not clear how those rates are set. It is very clear when we see the average price per day 15 hryvnias. It's unclear why on the next day it is 620. How come it could go 620? I understand that there could be good weather, there could be 2 extra gigawatts of sun in the air. But we also have the question, in this or other way, throughout the war, we will build 5 or 6 our own cogeneration, maybe 500 kilowatts, 600 kilowatts, and we would become the participants of energy market, and we would also need to understand some clear conditions. Once again, these are the loans that we take the responsibility for paying those back. And I never thought that it would relate to me, but nevertheless, we would need to have some clear state policies in the tariff making. What I mean, the price is either low or it's either high, but we need to operate certain algorithm. We need to follow certain algorithm of predictivity. Thank you very much, Boris. Andrii, I would like to comment, and then our last presentation from the Council of the Manufacturers of Weapons. Let me just have a feedback. The question that is related to crediting, we function on the level of Ministry of Economy. That's a great task, especially in the close to contact line territory. Definitely, the insurance companies, they do not want to go into the contact line territories. That's why we came up with the quasi insurance as a form of the state reimbursement. We hope that limits are about to be increased. And we also, the same thing as far as crediting, we have private bank and some other state banks via 579. So we can see that there is 5 billion hryvnias that were released to the contact line territories, which is 40% of all of the portfolios. 579 goes into the close to the contact line businesses. And tomorrow we'll have a meeting with the National Bank. And next week we're going to have the Council of Financial Stability. And together with the Ministry of Finance, we would set the task for the next year so that bank financing sector for the crediting of business, that it would be reoriented. So otherwise we would just not handle the economy in such a way. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrii. And Valentyna Vedrovska, she is the head of the Ukrainian Council for the Weapon Manufacturers. Let me just start with the military black humor. Would you suffer more problems on the energy because of the absence of the energy for your members, or the fact that you have switched from the strikes to the, industrial complexes? So did you finally have the release? Honestly speaking, I wanted to speak about the same, that the questions of power outages are not very relevant because we've got larger risks. If you look at the energy consumption, when the peaks of power outages have got into the slow mode with the manufacturing of weapons, because we have got the end of the budget year, beginning of the new budget year, while the additional agreements are done and while the advance payments are set, and as a result, so many companies for this period, they were dropping their manufacturing capacities, and therefore for us to suffer a great strike or great damage to the manufacturing of that's definitely with the great industry. As our manufacturers say, that everybody would was talking about their own business and it was all focused. My honor is to talk and represent the whole branch. And we talk about hundreds of companies that are so different, because different by form of ownership, because there's the state companies that are doing the military equipment for the state, but there's also private sector because they also go into the defense industry. They have sometimes the subcontracts and also the manufacturers of the whole assembly. So dozens and dozens of companies, hundreds of companies. And somebody that drops out of that link due to their power outages, definitely they slow down the whole manufacturing process. If we talk about the military industrial complex, the great number of entities that are in the priority, basically energy supply. At least they try to remain, but that does not cover the periods of contingency, shutdowns. And whenever that happens, the defense industry also drops. I want to say that it has a long-term perspective because the defense contract from the state, the state companies, they're very specific. First of all, the manufacturer cannot just stop manufacturing or drop in production. Why? Because there's no obligation to go on with the defense contract to produce it by the certain timelines. If the production is stopped, then it's going to be done, and then they would be paying 7 to 13% of the penalty, which is even more than the income of the manufacturer. So we do everything to comply, and that's why 100% of manufacturers they already have backup power supplies like the power storages or generators. But it's also necessary to remember that not all of these backups can provide the necessary capacity, and therefore we still have to observe that there is a slowdown. Also, manufacturing suffer a lot from the fact that they do not suffer so much from the power outages as from the deviation of the provided currently. Yes, the equipments they suffer. The equipment do not survive these drops of energy, and as for now, our manufacturers they suffer from that. But we would also watch in the perspective throughout the year how are the aftermath of all of those actions. Thank you very much, Valentyna. I did try to be as fast as possible because I see that we are already out. Yes, we have already left our timelines, but the most important thing out of your speech, it looks like the main message is not really economical, but rather it's political and military, because whenever our enemies say that they're striking the energy in order to stop the defense industry, then definitely your presentation in the direct prove that this is not true, because they should know exactly what are the uniqueness of budgets whenever we have defense industry working hard and working less. Then in this case they would strike not in the winter time. So this is definitely nothing else but the terrorism pressure on the population, as they like to say that they like to force us to sign peace on their terms. But please do not judge my words too much, because I would rather smile instead of laughing, because our defense industry is just like a critical infrastructure. We are first targets to be hit. So if to compare the manufacturing, definitely there is more damage done to the strikes to the manufacturing. Even the very fact for the air raid alert for the manufacturer, it is not good, because many manufacturers, after they suffered some strikes already, they have to slow down the manufacturing so that their people, their crews, they might go into the shelter, because when the damage is done to the industry equipment, it is not so painful as whenever we have civilian casualty. So anytime we have the direct hits on the manufacturing, or the power is not provided, or there is a slowdown of the process as a result of the air raid, all of that comprehensively, they impact the manufacturing of weapons. Nevertheless, following the experience that we already achieved in the last years, the weapon manufacturers, they can see that when the energy objects are being hit, if we at least have the energy, then we have to produce because they may come and catch up in the summer. So we have to manufacture whenever the opportunity is there. We try to show the flexibility. So I have a brief feedback here. The defense and energy sectors, they're very closely linked. Many defense industry, their representatives, they say that they can get their insurance only at 50% of their assets. Yes, the non-market methods like centralized decisions are crucial here, but it looks like this is what are the descriptions of the requirements of the military days and the martial law. I do not want to talk about nothing bad because the insurance was already mentioned. Out of the good positive things, this is lasting like once the defense city is launched. The good thing is that the state helps with the relocation of manufacturing, but once again, that could be assistance from the strikes, especially direct strikes, especially if it's relocation to the basically to the mountainous areas, because thanks to the horizons, they cannot they can provide some security. But once again, talking about the energy, it's still difficult, and so our manufacturers are trying to survive as much as they can. Thank you, Valentina. Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. We have reviewed the situation from a variety of sides, and I think that at least myself and my colleagues, we have found out lots of new things. We're going to be posting more about that. We're going to be analyzing all that. We're going to be waiting for you to join this thing in the next discussion of the economy during the war. I wish all of you to have a peaceful and bright night as much as there's opportunity for that. It looks like the last night of strikes by Russia that we managed to survive not too bad, based on the situation of the energy system and the situation with the strike. Thank you very much.